A town. The town square was still calm and peaceful as the first rays of the morning heralded the beginning of a fresh day. Everything was in its place, the leaves were gently dancing in the wind, the birds were singing. But there was one corner that was home to a story that would put a damper on the calm. The park there was the most peaceful corner of the town. Old people would take walks, mothers would have fun with their children in the park, and young people would do their morning sports. Today, the peaceful atmosphere of the park was disturbed by the mocking laughter of a few young people. At that moment, a man was walking at the corner of the park. That old man had perhaps faced many hardships over the years. In his eyes was a story of the bitter flavors of life. His old soldier's uniform was a reminder of his past, while his heavy steps showed the marks left on him by the years. He was a hero who had fought for this land in the past, but that morning in the park, no one knew he was a hero. No one knew how valuable that war veteran was, what hardships he had gone through and what a valuable struggle he had fought in life. The young people were so carefree and disrespectful that they saw this man as a plaything. There was no pity in their eyes, no respect. They were the kind of punks you often see in the city. Cynically, they began to walk after the old man. Laughing, mocking. Each of them filled the emptiness inside them with amusement, mocking the old man in the worst possible way. Some imitated his steps, others tried to make his slow movements amusing. But the man did not react or get angry. Only his eyes darkened for a moment. The sadness and anger he had been holding inside came out of his eyes, even if only a little. But there was another eye in the park that day, another person. As Barron Trump walked through the center of town, he nervously noticed the scene at the corner of the park. He saw the jeers and the frivolous demeanor of the young people. Barron paused for a moment as he looked at them. Without saying anything, he continued to listen to the jeers of the young people. For a moment, he thought about the silence of the park. Here, he believed, someone's need for respect should be met in the simplest way. Barron Trump was a young man who not only came from a prominent family, but also knew how important it was to show respect to another human being. He wanted young people to be aware of the disrespect they were showing the old man. In that moment, he thought within himself that he would act not only as a human being, but also as a person who was determined to stand up for what was right and maintain respect. He thought he could turn this situation around, quietly but firmly change things. Barron Trump began to move towards the other corner of the park, his steps quickening. As Barron Trump quickened his pace, the voices of the young people grew louder. Mocking laughter shattered the silence of the park, and the old man's patience was at its limit. The young people began to provoke his patient stance. The cane in the old man's hand fell to the ground and one of them imitated him laughing. "Come on, walk a little faster, old man," one of the young men shouted, throwing his cigarette on the ground and trying to make the old man's steps even bigger and more amusing. Watching this scene, Barron realized how hard it was to suppress his anger. The sight of someone being so humbly disrespectful reminded him of what his father had taught him. The Trump family values had always emphasized respect for others. Barron found it strange that young people felt entitled to insult someone in this way, and wondered what he could do to make them realize their own faults. Just then, Barron took another step. He was so determined that his eyes were focused directly on the youth. One of the young men noticed Barron's approaching steps. Turning quickly, he glared at Barron and said, "What are you looking at? Get away from here," in a slightly more sarcastic manner. But Barron met the young man's eyes with a hard stare. He could see the determination and strength in his eyes. The young man lost his smile when he realized the seriousness of Barron's gaze. For a moment, there was a somber silence. Even then, choosing his words carefully and speaking calmly, Barron said, "What do you gain by being so disrespectful here, by insulting an old man?" "Nothing. That man is a war veteran who gave his life for this land. While he is still alive, he lives with the honor and values of the past. But you are trying to belittle a person just for fun. Doing so will only make you smaller." The young men's facial expressions changed. In a few seconds, the tension between them was palpable. Barron said calmly but firmly, "Respecting a human being is not a sign of greatness, it is a sign of humanity." Every word, like a lesson, penetrated the hearts of the young men. Voices began to rise in that park. Barron's words were beginning to have an effect on the young people. One of them bowed his head, not knowing what to do. The others fell silent, none of them daring to speak with such confidence in front of Barron. At that moment, a man approached Barron. The man looked like a man who had come to town, with his smart suit and proper posture. But the charisma around the man was impressive, not only because of the clothes he wore, but also because of the confidence he exuded. When the young men noticed the man approaching, they didn't know what to do. "Are you the one mocking that old man?" the man called out, cool and calm. One of the young men bowed his head in silence, not knowing how to answer. The man glanced at Barron and smiled slightly. In that moment, Barron felt that everything was all right. The young people had confronted not just the words, but the man's changing perspectives with confidence around Barron. And in that moment, a sense of respect seemed to settle in the young people. They would now remember this event, which they had once seen as entertainment, as a turning point in their lives. Barron calmly turned back and retraced his steps. Seeing the young people changed, not just by words, but by feelings, gave him a real taste of victory. He took another step. He walked up to the old man. The man said nothing, just nodded his head and thanked Barron. It was a moment not just for a young man, but also a lesson in humanity. With this encounter, Barron realized once again how valuable it is to stand up for what is right and to have a conscience. As Barron approached the old man, there were still the regretful looks of the young people behind him. It was clear on their faces how deeply this incident had affected them. Just a moment of ridicule had been a turning point in their lives. Barron took the old man by the hand and looked at him respectfully. In that moment, he had learned a great lesson, not just as a young man, but as a human being. The old man felt Barron's support and noticed the change in the young man's eyes. On the one hand, he was thinking about his own experiences and the pain of a war veteran, and on the other hand, he was admiring Barron's patience and maturity with these young men. At that moment, one of the young men took another step in front of the old man. We were so wrong," he said with a deep sigh. "We are really sorry, we were disrespectful, we should never have done that." One by one, the others bowed their heads in apology. One of them said to Barron Trump, his voice trembling, "Thank you for the lesson you taught us. We will never behave like that again." The old man took a long look at them, with the patience and maturity that many years had given him. There was a softening in his eyes, an acceptance. "You realized your mistakes, that's important," he said. "Everyone has a lost moment, but the important thing is not to repeat those mistakes and to fulfill the requirements of being human. You have learned a lesson of humanity here today, remember that." Then, the old man smiled and silently nodded, giving the young men the opportunity to take a few steps back. Barron calmly bowed his head. Sometimes humanity starts with respecting someone, and sometimes, just by taking one step, you can change someone's world. The young people simply nodded and walked away from this lesson that would leave an important mark on their lives. Barron returned to the old man with his head bowed. "Sometimes it is only patience that brings out the great power in you," he said to the old man. "You have had it, and I have learned it. The true greatness in a man lies in patience and standing up for what is right." The old man smiled slightly. "Thank you, Barron. You have taught me a lesson today. No matter how young you are, it is always important to stand up for what is right. You have found the right path." In that moment, the connection between them grew stronger once more. It was an important moment, not just for Barron, but for both of them. Dear friends, if you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because there is much more interesting and fascinating content waiting for you.